Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time is regarded by many as one of the best video games ever made. Little can be said that is not already part of some retrospective or another. One might just go ahead and call it an expertly crafted tale of a young boy facing unsurmountable odds to fulfill his destiny and save the world. Ocarina of Time is also the first Zelda game I ever played, well over 20 years ago. Something I likely share with many of you if you're still watching this video. I remember I used to wonder why Link would swing his sword with his left hand. Because I grew up in the countryside and I had little to no friends, so I never learned that being left-handed was a thing until about halfway through middle school. But I digress. Before I forget, my name is Jack. Hello and welcome. Also, it should be stated that this video series is not meant to be a review, and what follows is most certainly not a theory. This is merely a retelling of the story we all know under a bit of a new light. With everything out of the way, this story begins with a nightmare. Elsewhere, the Great Deku Tree will entrust a fairy with a mission. The tiny being is to bring you before him, as the time has come for the one without a fairy, again that's you, to begin their journey. What comes next is simple enough to describe. Navi the fairy will fly to your house and after a rude awakening will introduce herself. You will obtain both a sword and a shield and eventually make your way to the Deku Tree. Before that though, we have a great opportunity to check in with the Kokiri, the children of the forest, and maybe acquire some information about who you are. For starters, how come you were the only one without a fairy, and how long have you been here? Most importantly, are those trees like the Deku Tree? Because that keeps me up at night. As you'll learn, the Great Deku Tree gave life to all of the Kokiri, and as such, is supposed to be kind of like their father. That's why every Kokiri has a fairy companion, a gift from the Deku Tree so that they may be safe. That hardly seems fair though, that you're the only one fending for yourself. From what we can gather, the rest of the children appear to hold a certain distant respect, I guess I should say, with one very notable exception. Saria here seems to be very fond of you. She looked excited when she realized Navi was now your guardian fairy. Mido, on the other hand, makes it his mission to remind you that you are different, that you don't belong. Even after claiming the Kokiri sword and donning the Deku shield, Mido angrily remarks that he will never accept you as one of them. I've been playing coy up to this point. Link is not a Kokiri. He was left in the care of the Great Deku Tree when he was a baby. He was not given life by the forest's guardian, and as such, he does not share the same connection to nature, nor the protection that the rest of the children take for granted. Granted? How do you pronounce that? This makes it difficult for everyone to get along. Let me explain. First, the children can tell that Link is not like themselves. He does lack a fairy after all. So it is not surprising to see them steer clear of him in an attempt to avoid an uncomfortable situation. Through this simple act, they are rejecting Link, making him feel neglected and lonely. Now, as much as I would like to say that this is all me, it isn't. A somewhat recent meta-analytic review, which is a type of scientific review that aggregates and reanalyzes data from multiple studies, found out, rather unsurprisingly, that perceived discrimination, which is the experience, real or imagined, of being treated differently can lead to harmful effects on psychological well-being. The effects range from loss of self-esteem to developing anxiety and depression, as well as in general just having unpleasant emotional states called negative affect in psych lingo. The effect also seems to be stronger for children than for adults. Whatever the source of discrimination, this will necessarily result in Link being put in quite a vulnerable position. Indeed, perhaps one in which he'd come to fully comply with whatever may be asked of him. Fairly easily, actually, especially when coming from an authority figure. The Great Deku Tree comes to mind. After you face Mido and answer the summons of the Great Deku Tree, you learn that the Guardian has been cursed. The Deku Tree requests that you enter his body and rid him of the hex through your wisdom and courage. Let's rephrase that for a bit. Link's caretaker is tasking him with finding a way to break a curse that not even the forest's protection was able to negate. You enter the mouth of the Guardian, and after fighting numerous spiders, you eventually come face to face with the curse's incarnation, the parasitic armored arachnid, Goma. You dispatch the beast without incurring mortal injuries. You watch it collapse, and the defeated monster quickly dissolves into a ghostly fog. After the deed, strange magic helps you find yourself back outside. By this point, Link must have realized that he is frighteningly effective at combat. He's bested creatures that can only be described as monsters, wielding what essentially amounts to a kitchen knife, a wooden plank, some sticks, nuts, and a slingshot, without so much as a drop of hesitation or fear, mind you. It's almost as if he held the soul of a hero. The Deku Tree congratulates you, reassuring you by saying that he knew you will be able to break the curse. Although he has something else to tell you. The one who cast the curse is none other than the pursuer you saw in a dream. A wicked man clad in black. A sorcerer that seeks to obtain the essence of the gods. But that's not all. Although you broke the curse, just like the Deku Tree predicted, it was much too late. The Great Deku Tree will fade away regardless. So he gives you a new set of instructions. You must take the treasure of the Kokiri's emerald, and leave for Hyrule Castle. You must meet the Princess of Destiny. With his intentions made clear, the Deku Tree withers away before Navi and you. For now, you know you must carry out his will. Navi says her goodbyes to the Guardian as you prepare to face the responsibility thrust upon you, as well as a whole village of children who have just lost their father. The distant respect we mentioned earlier is gone. It has given way to a variety of responses, from concern to misunderstanding and even anger. Mido is the first Kokiri to learn of the Deku Tree's fate, and it doesn't go well. He demands you tell him what you did, soon accusing you of letting the Deku Tree die. In his eyes, this is all your fault. Fado, like Mido, asks what you did to the Great Deku Tree, albeit in a seemingly less threatening fashion. These girls used to give you tips toward your next objective, and yet, now they only wonder whether you will leave and where to. There is a certain boy that exhibits very interesting behavior. Toward the west exit of the Kokiri forest, this child blocks your way. When you first speak to him, he explains that he's there to stop any Kokiri from leaving. The Deku Tree has made it clear to them that if they were to leave the forest, they will die. After the curse is broken and you inherit the Deku Tree's will, the boy will no longer stand guard on the exit. If spoken to, he will still advise you not to leave, worried that you might just drop right there and then. In truth, and as the Hyrule Encyclopedia explains, the Kokiri will not immediately die if they leave the Guardian's domain. Instead, they will begin to age until eventually they disappear. The children do not seem to know this, however, so it makes sense for the child to fear for your life. To him, you are a fellow Kokiri after all. I know the encyclopedia is not exactly canon, and that there's mistakes in the book every now and then, but this is the one place where I could find information about what happens to the Kokiri that go beyond the forest. So, I'm sorry. Unfazed by the warning, you face a path and exit your home. Or what should feel like it, I guess. Before entering the great wide world, however, Saria has something to say. She mutters that she knew. She knew that you will one day leave the forest. She knew that you were always different from herself and from the rest of the children. She also says, however, that that's okay, that you will forever be her friend. She then gives you a parting gift, an ocarina, in hopes that you will remember her when you play it, and likely somewhat expecting you to return to the forest from time to time. And that's the end of our introduction to this world. For Link, this is the first step towards becoming the hero's spirit or the hero's shade, but we'll talk about that much later. Let us rewind for a bit. Link was unable to save the Great Deku Tree. Sure, the forest spirit may not have been the ideal caretaker, but he was still Link's parental figure, and the child witnessed his very last moments. This is upsetting, once again, for a couple of reasons. First, Link has just lost his guardian. Second, he played a part in that loss. And third, his closest relationships are now permanently changed as a result of that loss. The first item probably needs no explanation, right? Death itself, especially when in the case of someone you care about, is a profoundly traumatic experience. When dealt with inappropriately, it can lead to significant behavioral and cognitive changes that may impede day-to-day functioning. It doesn't help that, by reason of temporal contiguity or temporal proximity, it will be fairly easy for Link to conclude that his actions directly caused the demise of the Deku Tree. Think of it this way. You're going about your day when an old friend pops into your head. Maybe you heard a song or had a snack that reminded you of them. Minutes later, you receive a phone call from said friend. Heuristics will push you to find a relationship between the two events, establishing a false perception of causality. The causal relationship might go one way or the other. You could believe that you thinking about your friend caused said friend to call you. Or perhaps you might believe that because your friend was about to call you, you thought of them. All in all, even if you're certain that psychic powers do not exist, you'd still feel compelled to believe that there's something going on. This is called superstitious thinking or magical thinking. Research has shown that temporal contiguity, temporal proximity of these events can be enough for a person to attribute these causal relationships, even when they may not exist in reality. The hero's young age should also be considered. Magical thought is most frequently found in children, with it being most prominent during Jean Piaget's pre-operational stage of development, from ages 2 to 7, give or take. So yes, Link probably really thinks that the Deku Tree's fate is his fault. Brief parenthesis, Piaget's theory of development has been challenged, and some neo-Piagetian theories have come forth. This is to be expected, as science is always changing. Plus, Piaget's theory was developed mainly from his own observations, so it is very much subject to bias. That said, his work is still quite useful. Lastly, Link was a somewhat accepted member of his community and was even said to be Saria's favorite, and even the Deku Tree's favorite somehow. This changed quite abruptly when the curse of the Deku Tree took its toll. Not only will Link carry guilt over a painful event well beyond his control, but also over the suffering of the Kokiri, on top of their mistreatment of him. It seems extremely harsh, yes, but events such as these are harsh as well, sadly. Link is now mostly alone, with his only friends now being Navi and Saria. Hyrule Field opens before you, a vast, albeit a bit empty, pasture that serves as the connective tissue between the different areas you will eventually visit and conquer. As you wander about, someone suddenly calls to you by name. As if that wasn't strange enough, the one speaking is none other than an owl. The owl excitedly tells you that the time has come for you to start your adventure, whatever that means. However, it also says that you will encounter many more hardships as you progress. It calls this unfortunate situation fate, and asks of you to not feel discouraged even when the times are tough. It points you towards Hyrule Castle and promptly flies away after making sure you understood everything it said.
You did get all of that, didn't you? 'Cause I didn't. I'm waiting for you to laugh.
You reach what looks like a castle to you, and right on time too. The drawbridge is lifted at night because apparently monsters show up in the field and may attack unsuspecting travelers. As you come into the building, you're greeted by a guard. A Hylian guard, an adult. He explains that you're entering Hyrule Castle town, not Hyrule Castle per se. I mean, it's still exciting. It's a whole new town filled with people to meet, the games to play, shops to browse, maybe even new food to try. This is an opportunity to learn about how different the world is, far from the protection of the Great Deku Tree. Let's take a step back for a second. It's barely been a couple of minutes, let's ignore in-game time for a while, since the whole dungeon thing happened, and I'm not too sure Link will be fully recovered yet, which makes his encounter with the owl all the more vital. Link just left behind everything and everyone he knew. Kipura Kipura is the first other beyond the forest, and the words he offers are nothing but encouragement. Sure, being told that facing hardship is your fate might be a little grim to hear, but it is better to be prepared than to go blindly into painful experiences. In fact, this has been studied already. Pain response may be mitigated by an explanation of the experience to be had. Think of the first time you got your flu shots. I remember mine quite vividly. Back when I was but a wee little lad, I was told it would not hurt. Then, when the needle came up to my skin, I did feel a sharp pain. I felt utterly betrayed and I cried. My mom must have felt pretty bad too because she took me straight to McDonald's right after. But I keep getting distracted. Link has just met his first real stranger and they've told him not to feel discouraged. After what the child has gone through, being rejected by pretty much everyone in his village and whatnot, this is likely to be very impactful. Maybe the world isn't quite over, you know? And he can still find his place in it somewhere. You decide to speak to the townsfolk, roam the streets, and visit as many shops as possible. There's quite the number of people here, a bustling market filled with the roars of excited customers, a couple enjoying each other's company, dogs, chickens, and even children and elderly people. You first visit the bazaar, an oddities shop where a tall, extremely muscular man sells trinkets and weaponry. You buy a Hylian shield because you never know, and exit the store. As you stroll around the back alleys, you realize that not everything is as bright and happy as it seems here. They may not openly show, but some of these people have struggles of their own. Take Malon for instance. The small girl is alone in the middle of the market, waiting for her father to come back from a milk delivery at Hyrule Castle. As it turns out, they own Lon Lon Ranch. Maybe your goals align here. You were already going to the castle, so might as well look for Malon's dad. After all, how hard could it be meeting with a princess? Oh. You meet Malon again and she remarks that her father is probably asleep somewhere around the castle. This seems to be a rather frequent occurrence as she just laughs it off. To help you wake her father, if and whenever you find him, she gives you a cocoa egg. You get back on track and try to reach the castle again. This time you succeed. Maybe those guards ought to get their eyes checked. Although, then again, attentional blindness is a thing. It could be that the guards are not quite expecting to spot a forest child, or they may not even care, so long as you don't trouble them specifically.
Or it could just be a game mechanic, who's to say?
You make your way toward the back door and you spot a man, fast asleep among boxes, presumably filled with milk bottles. That has to be Malon's dad. The egg you were carrying miraculously hatches right before your eyes, and Talon wakes to the chick's cry. You explain that Malon's been waiting for him at the market, and this horrifies the ranch owner. He hurriedly runs toward the castle gate, loudly exclaiming how Malon will make him miserable for leaving her behind.
I don't think I get that vibe from the girl, but
With Talon gone, all you need to do is move some boxes around and infiltrate the castle.
back to Link for a bit. The new sights and sounds definitely make for a wonderful distraction. The boy gets to experience a new way of life. Back in the forest, there were only children, with the Great Deku Tree as a lone adult. Here in Hyrule Castle Town, most people are adults, each with their own marked interests and worries. It's enough to get one thinking. That said, Link probably feels overwhelmed at the flurry of stimuli being thrown at him. The people, the smells, and even the buildings. Yet the owl's words might just provide enough of a push for Link to give all of this a chance. As he looks around, he finds that it's actually not that different from back at the village. Sure, there's many new shapes, new colors and fabrics, but everyone seems friendly enough. Plus, even though some people point out his clothes, it's usually done more so with curiosity and thrill rather than malice. Now then, Link meeting Malon and Talon is, to me, extremely significant. This is the first time that he has seen a real parent-child relationship, and it looks to be rather funny somehow, heartwarming. It is obvious that both characters care deeply for one another and know each other well enough to realize what the other might think or do in a given scenario. There is no sign of the distance that Link grew up experiencing. This might result in the following. First, there might be some resentment toward the Deku Tree and the Kokiri for treating him as an outsider for so long. I mean, even the folks at the market treated him as an equal, if a little put off by his forest clothes. Second, Link's guilt over the curse of the Deku Tree might sharpen. After all, the Guardian was his parent figure, and he might wonder if he could have done anything differently to improve their relationship. Lastly, we could also see Link develop jealousy over the bond Malon and Talon share. After all, why would they have mutual love when he didn't? Why would anyone else be allowed to be happy like that when he wasn't? And yeah, it's also possible that he'd simply find their love inspiring and that he'd be eager to befriend them. But there's no drama in that. I cannot sell that. What am I supposed to do?
Back to the adventure. You successfully avoid the last of the guards separating you from the princess. You reach her garden, chamber, and a lengthy conversation takes place. The young princess's name is Zelda, you see, and apparently she has prophetic dreams. After confirming that you indeed hold the Kokiri's emerald, she confides in you, letting you know that she believes you will free Hyrule from a certain darkness. A darkness she believes is represented by a singular man hailing from the desert. Ganondorf. Funnily enough, he is the pursuer you saw in your own dream. You learn that the man is after the sacred power of the gods, the Triforce. Zelda knows where this power is hidden, and her plan is to get to it before Ganondorf can. For this to happen, you will need the 3 spiritual stones as well as the Ocarina of Time. Right after catching you up to speed with the creation myth of this land, Zelda asks that you take a look at the man through her window. He spots you, and as startling as that was, the princess reassures you and asks that you collect the rest of the spiritual stones, next of which will be the spiritual stone of fire. It is currently under the protection of the Goron people, and thus must you travel to Death Mountain. She gives you a royal letter and sends you on your merry way. The princess's retainer, Impa, will escort you outside. But before that, the tall lady teaches you Zelda's Lullaby, an ancient song tied to the royal family. The Sheikah woman takes you outside and points you toward Kakariko village, a settlement at foot of Death Mountain. You know, the active volcano. Impa Deku nods you point blank and disappears as you ponder about the implications of living right under an active volcano. You look up to the village, half hoping it will be as fun as Hyrule Castle Town was. However, there's a couple of stops to make first. For the sake of completeness, you go back and visit Lon Lon Ranch. There you meet again with Talon and Malon as well as Ingo, a farmhand who wishes to be in charge. Remember that name, remember that dude, Ingo, because he's a piece of... When you approach Talon, he thanks you again for your help at the castle and asks if you'd like to play a game. You'll have to catch 3 Super Cuckoos, and after you do, the ranch owner rewards you with a bottle of nutritious Lon Lon milk. Talon notes that you have the skills necessary to become, and I quote, one of the world's best cowboys, and half-jokingly asks if you'd like to marry Malon.
That's a weird thing to ask a child, but okay.
After playing with Talon, you go look for Malon, whom you find at the racetrack, happily singing to herself. Malon, like Talon, seems to enjoy having you around and quickly introduces you to her friend, Epona. Yes, Epona is a horse, don't worry about it. Malon's also very eager to have you sing with her and is ecstatic when you bring out your ocarina to play along. It turns out that it was actually her mother who composed the song she's singing. You jam it out, and then Epona warms up to you and even follows you around for a bit to Malon's delight. Navi soon reminds you of another person to visit, however, and you get on your way. Saria is waiting. You get back to the forest with the child guarding the entrance seeming perplexed at the sight of you. He figures you must have not left the forest after all, since, well, you were alright. If you speak to the rest of the children, you'll notice that their confusion and animosity has almost completely evaporated. Instead, they point you towards the Lost Woods, as Saria is waiting for you at the usual place. You navigate the labyrinthine structure, and strangely enough, Keipora Gaebora shows up again. He advises you to follow the mysterious tune until you reach the Sacred Forest Meadow. After some monster fighting, you finally reach Saria, who appears to be the source of the music. She calls this meadow her secret place, and tells you that she feels like it will be very important for both of you one day. Right after, she offers to teach you a song that will allow you to talk with the spirits in the forest.
Which is pretty odd, because when you do play it, you can only call Oh.
The song happens to be the same tune you've been hearing across the Lost Woods, the creatively named Saria's Song. With your bond renewed, you leave the secret spot, not before Keipora Gaebora interrupts you again to inform you that there's plenty of songs to learn and use in creative ways. But now it's time to get back on track. Let's talk about Link.
It has been an eventful couple of minutes there. Link now has officially been tasked with saving Hyrule, and to this end, he's been given a special connection to the royal family, in the form of both a song and a royal letter that will allow him to go where guards will normally impede him to. He's realized as well that children usually hold very little power in the world at large, seeing as how Zelda, the princess herself, was not able to stop Ganondorf's influence on her father the king. Likewise, Link has come to know that there is a number of different groups and races living in Hyrule, each with their own traits, preferences, and social practices. Perhaps most interestingly, he's been introduced to what seems to be an unequivocally evil man, someone who's willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their own goals. And I find this fascinating. Up to this point, the worst Link had really seen were people like Mido, who can be a little grumpy but don't quite go out of their way to cause real harm to a person. Now he's met eyes with a fully grown, desert-worn man, capable and willing to wield dark magic to take what he desires. Truly a terrifying man. There's also the fact that Link was given a monumental task, and while this is likely to be a source of self-doubt, he now has a chance at redemption over his failure to save the Deku Tree. How Link will take the whole situation is difficult to say. Psychologist Albert Bandura's work on social cognitive theory might give us some pointers though. Bandura developed a concept known as perceived self-efficacy. It is basically a measure of how confident a person is in their abilities. A low self-efficacy will make a person think of adversity as impossible obstacles, while an individual with high self-efficacy will look at the same adversity and think of it as an interesting challenge. Successful past experiences are usually a good source of self-efficacy, though verbal encouragement and the experiences of our peers can too help build confidence in ourselves. In Link's current state, with how he defeated Deku Scrubs and Arachnids while inside the Deku Tree, there's a case to be made for him being able to at least give saving Hyrule a go. I mean, he can still do much good for the world. In addition, there is people who believe in him and like him. Indeed, people like the ranch owners happen to be quite fond of Link, going so far as to act like a bit of a surrogate family to him. During the hero's visit, Talon and Malon joyfully spent time speaking and playing with him. By sharing in this bond, we could see Link grow, perhaps even beyond his role as a tool for saving the world. And instead of fighting, we could see him enjoying the moment-to-moment beauty of life. It will certainly be tempting to leave everything behind and adopt a new lifestyle far away from fated hardship in a tragic past. Which is precisely why it's so interesting that Nabi will remind Link of Saria right away, right at this point. Saria is the one real ally Link had within the Kokiri. She genuinely cared for him and really wanted him to feel like he belonged, even though she knew he was different. Saria represents a link to Link's early life, an unbreakable bridge that anchors him to his own history. It is through Saria's song, after all, that Link is able to repair his connection to Kokiri Forest. The song allows him to reach a friend whenever he needs it, no matter the time or place. Certainly a more than welcome form of assistance for such a stressful job, isn't it? And with that, Link is now involved in 3 major relationships. One of duty with Princess Zelda and Hyrule itself, one of warmth with Malon and Talon, and one of familiarity with Saria and the Kokiri. It is a most interesting state of affairs. The hero has finally been able to learn about and nurture social connections unlike he's ever had before. Goals and responsibilities, many possible futures, have been thrust upon him, and it is up to the boy to wisely choose what seems best. A curious coincidence has arisen as well. These relationships are represented most strongly through female characters. While I am not arguing for the existence or inexistence of romantic feelings between Link and these strong lasses, I do find it quite amusing that it will turn out this way. After the trip back to the forest, you make your way to Kakariko Village, which is surprisingly close to Hyrule Castle. As you enter, a lone guard speaks to you. He is apparently a clock soldier. He will give you the time of day and let you know that Kakariko was once closed to the public, but Impa decided to open it. Another guard corroborates this, elaborating that Kakariko actually used to be a Sheikah village. Interesting. You thank the man and go exploring. There is probably much to see here.
As you check the village out, you meet a yelling man under a tree. He is simply known as the boss. Impa has hired several carpenters to revitalize the village and turn it into a bustling town, much like the market down by Hyrule Castle. The man seems frustrated at his workers though. Particularly, he mentions that even his son doesn't want to work. His frustration is such that he goes so far as to call all of them worthless. Harsh. Amusingly, the workers themselves think that their boss is overworking them, deeming the job one that will take quite some time. Maybe expanding a complete town really is a lot of work for 4 carpenters. A pretty house catches your eye, so you visit. You immediately regret your decisions and go back outside. You continue to explore, eventually making your way to what seems to be a graveyard. A stone near the entrance reads, "Here lie the souls of those who swore fealty to the royal family of Hyrule. The Sheikah, guardians of the royal family and founders of Kakariko, watch over these spirits in their eternal slumber. This is the final resting place for those loyal to the royal family." You take your time to run around. A child seems to be playing Gravekeeper, but that's probably none of our business. You spot a symbol of the royal family, here of all places. I wonder if there's anything you could use to prove your connection. Yeah, just use a lullaby. Lightning opens the way to what seems to be a forgotten crypt. And what kind of a savage would we be if we didn't immediately channel Rengoku? As you delve deeper, you find your usual spooky crypt stuff. Bats, bones, inscriptions, torches, unholy reanimated corpses, the works. After experiencing the ride of a lifetime, courtesy of Nintendo, you push forward until you reach the end. There you find a large stone slab with a hauntingly beautiful poem etched into it. The rising sun will eventually set. A newborn's life will fade. From sun to moon, moon to sun, give peaceful rest to the living dead. You also find the mysterious sun song there, a melody capable of changing the time of day, though it is unclear whether or not it advances time. Along with it, you find a note. Restless souls wonder where they don't belong. Bring them calm with the sun's song. Link is no stranger to the concept of death at this point. It is an inevitability of life. After all, he did defeat a number of insects during his stay within the Great Deku Tree. Not to mention the whole curse thing. The idea of a centralized place where the bodies of once proud warriors lay might be a reminder that perhaps one day he will too rest and reside in a place like this one. For better or worse, Link is a warrior himself, and it may be a little upsetting to be faced with such a clear presentation of what his final destination might be. Then there's the crypt. Children, being small humans, are naturally drawn to mystery. It is the very purpose of our curiosity, a drive to search for the unknown. Link snooping around the graveyard and subsequently finding the royal crypt is, then, almost inevitable. It must have seemed odd, however, that Zelda's lullaby was the key to entering such a dark place, especially after going deeper and deeper. Check this out. This is a Redead. Probably not your run-of-the-mill enemy in a children's video game. It resembles a desiccated human body with a wooden box for a head. It is a truly intriguing creature that has caused endless discussions on Zelda forums about their nature and purpose. Their outward appearance and behavior make one think of zombies, but their defining characteristic, a paralyzing shriek,
is what really sets them apart. They also do this, and I really don't like them. For a long time, it was believed that these were the product of necromancy, using the dark arts to meddle with life and death. But Nintendo kept saying that these monsters were simply magic giving a humanoid form. These days, and according to Nintendo, Redeads are supposedly just clay automata. An interesting article by Meredith Lord over at Zelda Universe proposes that the Redeads are a reference to Haniwa, Japanese clay dolls that were placed near or inside tombs. Now, I am not here to say what they are or what they are not, but the stone slab is indeed mentioning living dead. Make of that what you will. Whatever their purpose, their being inside a royal crypt suggests that these monsters were put there by order of the royal family, which might make Link doubt the righteousness of him being sent as an envoy to save the world. It brings things into question. Why would the good guys make such a horrific thing? And if it's made by my friends, why is it attacking me? Going back to the paralysis-inducing scream, it is a horrifying weapon. You might have experienced something akin to this before. It is a fairly well-known event. People report waking from sleep in their rooms, unable to move at all, and then seeing shadows or monsters approaching them. Some people report feeling pressure over their bodies as well, as if something was pushing on them. I'm sure there's an esoteric explanation or another for this, but sleep physiology suggests these are simply hallucinations. When going through the process of waking up or falling asleep, it is very common to experience hallucinations. Now, don't freak out. Everyone has hallucinations once in a while. It doesn't necessarily mean you've gone insane. Sleep deprivation and high amounts of psychological stress will make them much more likely to happen, though. We call these experiences hypnagogic or hypnopompic hallucinations, depending on which part of the sleep cycle they occur in. Now, picture that experience of being immobile, but on your feet, fully awake, with a huge corpse-like monster coming toward you. It's very scary. Fighting doesn't seem like an option, so the best course of action for Link will be to run. After learning the sun's song, however, Link earns the ability to paralyze the ghastly apparitions, as well as quite literally controlling the time of day. Through music, Link obtained a supernatural power that rivaled the darkness he just faced. Slowly but surely, Link learns more about the world and himself. Remember self-efficacy? I imagine defeating zombies through magic must be quite the boost in confidence. Now, even if the royal family had these things made, Link might still have benefited from the spooky occurrence. The child now knows that the distinction between good and bad people might be harder to make than one might think. After playing around with the power to summon celestial objects, you figure it's best that you get back on track with saving the world. You take the path leading to Death Mountain, and after a brief but still uncomfortable interaction with the guard at the gate, you begin the climb. You quickly get to Goron City, meeting a couple of members of the race on your way there. They look like rocks. End of sentence. The city itself is full of Goron people suffering from hunger. It appears they have been cut off from their food supply, which consists of very specific gourmet minerals that can only be extracted from the Dongo's Cavern, a deposit you unwittingly passed by a moment ago. You could just eat the boulder. You do eat rocks. It's right there. You ask around for the spiritual stone of fire,
and you're told that Darunia, the leader of the Gorons, took it and shut himself in his room. Naturally, you decide to pay him a visit. Blocking your way is a huge stone door, but after you prove your connection to the royal family, it opens. You finally meet Darunia, a beefcake of a Goron sporting an upside-down smile. A quick chat with the guy allows you to learn that Goron society is facing some major issues right now. Pretty much all of them owing to the fact that the Dungos cavern is inaccessible due to dino infestation. This has put Darunia in quite a crappy mood, and thus he's unwilling to cooperate with you, or anyone else for that matter. After you get a tip from a local Goron, you bring some sick beats to Darunia. These turn him insane in the membrane, and he erupts into this abomination. After the impromptu interpretive dancing, Darunia opens up to you and proposes a deal. You play pest control on the Dungos cavern, proving that you're a real man, and Darunia will give you the spiritual stone of fire, which we now know is called the Goron's ruby. The Goron leader also equips you with a Goron bracelet, a wristband that increases your grip strength, allowing you to pull up bump flowers. You'll use one to break the boulder you saw before. As per the usual Zelda dungeon rules, you go in, you get a new item, you re-extinctify the dinosaurs, and you use the strange magic to get out. Darunia gleefully breaks your neck as he congratulates you on a job well done. He then goes on to retell his interactions with Ganondorf, emphasizing how different you are from him. Darunia then makes you his sworn brother, giving you the Goron's ruby as a token of friendship.
Neat.
Let's get back to Link.
This is the first time the boy has met a wholly new civilization, and they all look very similar, except for the incredibly stylish mane of Darunia. It is likely that this new encounter will be filled with both some uneasiness and much excitement. This is simply curiosity at work again. The fact that the general state of the Gorons is one of discontent and sadness is likely to make an impression on Link as well. It is an example of how trouble can befall anyone and everyone, with problems being quite diverse as well. Link visiting Goron City is a function of his relationship to Hyrule as a whole. It is his responsibility to fix whatever problems may rear their heads, seeing as he's supposed to save the world. So after learning that hunger is afflicting these creatures, helping them should be a no-brainer. What's perhaps most interesting is the interaction with Darunia. While Link does have superficial understanding of duty in all of its confusing glory, Darunia actually realizes what it means to be at the forefront of a community and have said community expect him to solve whatever struggles come their way. Put into one word, it's frustrating. It's hard enough to be faced with tough decisions by yourself, but when you factor in the fact that your choices will change the lives of others, things suddenly carry much more weight. Darunia is understandably under a lot of stress, and that manifests itself in the form of, well, a completely rational crappy mood. This stops him from being open to suggestions, which in turn contributes to the situation staying the same, his mood continuing to be crappy, and you get the idea. Link gathering information about what Darunia likes becomes pivotal to the Goron leader opening up emotionally. It is such a simple thing, and yet it carries a massive impact. By playing Zarya's song to Darunia, Link allows him to take a break from worrying about his people starving. This break then allows Darunia to think a little more clearly and accept an outsider's help. It might seem a little oversimplified and obvious, but sometimes people need to get their minds off of a problem so they can properly come up with a solution. You've probably been in a similar situation at some point, no? You bash your head against your desk trying to solve a difficult math problem, only to quickly realize what the solution is after putting it down for a few hours. It's easy to forget that fatigue is quite a deciding factor when talking about performance. Without any breaks in between, performance quickly goes to the gutter. By the way, this is precisely why crunch doesn't work at all from a business standpoint.
Before seeing you off, Darunia suggests that you visit the Great Fairy living at the very top of Death Mountain.
She will power you up,
he says. You might as well, we're already there. And so the climb continues. After that death-defying experience, Kipura Gevura will encourage you to look around in order to find where the Great Fairy is hidden. You meet the Great Fairy of Power. She gives you the coveted spin attack, which I'm not gonna lie is really powerful.
Especially against living things.
Owlboy gives you a ride back down the mountain and you're free from that point on. If you go back to Zelda, she'll comment on you getting the Gorons ruby, but other than that, she won't provide any information as to what you should do next. Now will be as good a time as any to explore the rest of Hyrule. I mean, the last spiritual stone isn't gonna find itself. If you run around long enough, Kipura Gibora will mention some points of interest for you to explore, noting that you're free to go wherever you want. You check out Gerudo Valley until you're told to go away. Then you get to Lake Hylia. There you meet this dude and the owl again. This time you actually get a clue. The Zora, seem to be yet another race that has allied with the royal family. Okay, we're visiting the fish people. But let's discuss Link first.
Link's tally of friendships continues to grow, now that Darunia and the Gorons have become his sworn brothers. The phrasing in particular is very interesting. There's a general notion when discussing relationships that friends are the family you can choose. Now, Link didn't exactly choose Darunia as his brother, but the young hero was happily welcomed into this group nonetheless. Looking back on the Kokiri, or even on the Hylians of Hyrule Castle Town and London Ranch, the Gorons appear to be much more openly accepting and honor-bound when initiating new social bonds. Link's knowledge of the world and the people who inhabit it increases with every new step he takes. Something that I enjoy quite a bit is the fact that after going through this second dungeon and being persuaded to visit the Great Fairy of Power, Kipura Givora encourages Link to take a second to explore the rest of the world. This allows the child to unwind in a similar fashion to how he had helped Darunia. Whatever the stakes of Link's mission, he is still a child, and he's still a person. His sense of duty and willpower can only take you so far. I feel like a broken record at this point, but it is incredibly important to make time in your schedule for some good old R&R. Having some time for exploration allows Link to learn that there is a group living in the desert called the Gerudo, that the Zora, another of these world's humanoid races, are guardians of Hyrule's water source, and that they're fish. And that there's probably much more to everything than initially meets the eye. It's a great moment of respite that should allow Link to incorporate all the new experiences he has had thus far. Now, to be fair, Kipura Gevora is the one that throws out much of the exposition Link hears at this point. So one could understand this as the owl just pointing him in the right direction, right? But I don't think this diminishes the fact that the child was given a choice. Even when Birdman here offers a ride back to the castle, it is Link's prerogative whether he takes it. It's refreshing.
You make your way to Sora's River. where Keipora is already waiting for you. He comments on you becoming bigger and stronger already, which is a pretty tame way of saying, "You did what to a dinosaur?" Or, "The fairy lady was wearing what?" The owl lets you know that you're on the right track and mentions that in order to reach Sora's domain, you will need to let them hear the melody of the royal family, which of course means that you will have to play Zelda's lullaby. The Zora are apparently keepers of Hyrule's water source, so it makes sense that their home base will be sitting upriver. You make your way up, casually traumatizing a chicken, and true enough, Zelda's lullaby opens the way forward. Once in Zora's domain, you pull out your good old detective hat and start asking questions around. Who are these fish people? What's their deal? Are they sad that they can't eat premium rocks anymore? As you talk around, you realize that there isn't much going on. The Zora actually look at you as perplexed as you look at them. You partake in some obligatory minigame business, you meet the king, yes this is a monarchy, and you soon learn that the Zora princess, Ruto, is missing. The Zora have been looking far and wide for her, which explains why you found one of the fish guys at Lake Hylia. You also learn that the Zora's patron deity, Lord Javu Javu, swims around in Hyrule's water source. Ruto was in charge of preparing the deity's meals, so maybe there's a connection there. Could she have been, perhaps, eaten? Bingo! You break the news to the king, and after informing you that you will retrieve the princess from Jabu Jabu's insides, my absolute favorite animation in all of Zelda takes place. You heed the suggestion of one of the Zora, and you bring a fish with you, which, in hindsight, might have been a joke, because upon offering the Azteictian, the deity decides to swallow you. I mean, I guess that's one way of looking for the princess.
You're smart. I'm sure you know what's coming.
You hack and slash your way through the dungeon, and you meet the, beautiful Yandere Fish Princess, whom, upon learning you were sent there by King Zora, runs away and immediately falls through a mysterious fleshy hole.
I fail to see how this capable child ever got into a predicament such as this one.
You follow the princess into oblivion, and after confirmation that you're still alive, the princess scolds you for being there. She explains that she's quite used to navigating Lord Jabu Jabu's belly,
As you do.
but that lately all sorts of strange occurrences have been showing up. Weird holes, appendages, electric jellyfish, you name it. Ruto then politely asks that you leave her alone. But since she mentioned a stone, she's effectively become your only lead. You put up with her shenanigans and agree to hold the honor of carrying her. If you leave her behind, she says this, which is something, I suppose. You do some dungeoning while carrying Ruto around, and it becomes very apparent that her stone is indeed the spiritual stone you are looking for, the Zora's Sapphire. It turns out that the stone is an heirloom belonging to Ruto's late mother. As soon as the princess recovers her jewel, she demands you take her back home. She is of course also taken, and you won't see her until after you beat the living crap out of many creatures inhabiting the valley. You get to exterminating, and you successfully deworm the patron deity after fighting the bioelectric anemone, Barinade. Upon approaching the strange magic in order to exit the dungeon, Yandere Child Extraordinaire here scolds you for being late, claiming that she'd been just a little bit lonely. Anyhow, after you're back outside, Ruto inspects Link's face with great interest. She then says that she'll reward you for saving her, asking what you'd like to receive from her. Naturally, you mention the spiritual stone, only to have the princess reply that she may only gift it to the man who will become her husband.
I'm not sure I like where this is going. She gives you the rock, and with that, you've collected all 3 spiritual stones, which means we get to ignore Ruto for 7 years. Meeting Sora is yet another significant development for Link. It gives him the opportunity to explore the customs of new people. The Hylians live in a monarchy, while the Gorons stray from this system by instead holding some sort of fellowship, which Darunia just happens to lead. It's curious, then, to observe the similarities that the Zora have to the Hylians, even if they seem to be aquatically adapted creatures. They're fish, okay? They're fish. Fish. That's it. That's the joke, they're fish. What? As mentioned before, the Zora are organized into a monarchy, with only 2 members of the royal family ever shown. King Zora, great name by the way, and Princess Ruto. Link's interaction with these characters allows him some insight into one more facet of parent-child relationships. What happens when one of the members is put in danger. King Zora, albeit a goof and somewhat of a bossy fishman, cares very deeply for his daughter, making the Zora's #1 priority to find her, and even allowing Link, an outsider, to come in contact with their patron deity. That's some trust he's quickly given to one small child. Although rash, this is within expectation of what a distressed parent will do for the child, exhaust all possibilities to ensure their safety. Let's ignore the fact that he is recklessly endangering another child in the process. I mean, that's just par for the game now. Darunia technically put Link up to much worse with the whole sending him off to end the dinosaurs within a cave with actual active lava. I guess we can cut King Sora some slack here. Then there's Ruto, another bossy royal fish. From the moment Link meets her, their relationship appears to be pretty clear-cut. He's supposed to save the princess and bring her back to the king. The only complication that ever arises is the circumstance of Ruto becoming infatuated with the hero. Thanks to his, well, heroism. What's interesting as well is the way Ruto seems to be so very attached to the spiritual stone of water. The Zora princess keeps it as a token to remember her mother by, and only parts with it after pressuring Link into a strange engagement. Which to me signals that not only has Ruto evidently developed a very strong crush on Link, but she has also managed to grow quite a bit during their stay in the dungeon. Let me explain. This is of course purely speculation, but given Ruto is a child herself, and seeing how she holds the Zora Sapphire rather fondly, it seems safe to assume that losing her mother was a powerful and saddening event. If this is true, it could mean that Link's courage while within Jabu Jabu inspired Ruto herself to be brave, to cherish the loving memory of her mother beyond the items she left behind. This will be why, then, after facing so much danger inside the deity's belly to recover the Zora Sapphire, she was able to give it to Link so freely. She simply does not need it anymore. I recall Liam Triforce's Ocarina of Time retrospective, bringing this engagement up as little more than a childhood promise. Liam does bring it up in the context of more pressing matters taking precedence to the engagement though, but the sentiment is still the same. The engagement is just a game, While this position I quite agree with, I don't think either Link or Ruto quite understand the implications of marrying one another. I still think it is very relevant to Ruto's development. While Link might not take note of such a thing, and indeed might not even understand what she means by engagement, he can probably tell that the Sora child has taken an interest to him. This positive attention is likely to also boost his confidence a little bit, much like his continued success has so far. Unfortunately, things are about to take quite a drastic turn.
Having gathered all 3 spiritual stones, you return to Hyrule Castle, where you're greeted by an eerily familiar scene. Zelda has been forced to flee, being closely followed by Ganondorf. The warlock wastes no time asking you where the princess went, before mocking you for trying to protect them and blasting you with a magic ball. Ganondorf gallops away, leaving you to check out the item Zelda threw at you while on the run. It's the titular Ocarina of Time. As you grab the instrument, a vision of the princess teaches you the Song of Time. She instructs you to bring the spiritual stones to the Temple of Time and use the Ocarina of Time to play the Song of Time in order to open the Door of Time. Zelda claims you must do this to protect the Triforce, though it isn't exactly clear how that would help or how you children can even do so. Regardless, you go into town and find that everyone has become restless. There's a lady talking about leaving town, and you even meet a guard whose very last act is to inform you that Ganondorf has betrayed the King of Hyrule and that the princess meant to give you something. He tells you to hurry on to the Temple of Time, after which he stops moving. Heeding the call to action, you rush to the temple, whereupon you stand at some sort of podium, obviously meant to hold the spiritual stones, and play the Song of Time on your ocarina. The cool one. The doors in front of you open, revealing a weapon that Navi quickly recognizes as the Master Sword. You approach the pedestal the blade rests upon, and you pull. As light engulfs you, you see Ganondorf mocking you for opening the Door of Time, allowing him to reach the Sacred Realm. With this ominous vision, your time as a child, at least for now, comes to an end.
It certainly seems like Link has experienced quite a momentous occasion. The very nightmare that started this adventure has materialized in front of him, and Link is no match for the Prince of Thieves. This is an interesting blow. Although our young hero did what he could to stop Ganondorf, the fact of the matter remains that he is not powerful enough yet. For all the growth that Link has been forced to experience, including his learning about the many people that inhabit Hyrule, he is still not strong enough to actually save the world. And let's be honest, who will be? It's one thing to go on a life-changing field trip, and a very different one acquiring the skills and influence necessary to bring about a substantial change to this world's mundane conflict. Way back, when Link first met Zelda, he learned that children do not usually hold much leverage when discussing the matters of adults. This notion went through some evolution, however, as more and more authority figures placed their trust in him and allowed him to prove himself. Impa, Daronia, and King Zora, all leaders of their respective communities, gave Link the benefit of doubt and let him try his hand at solving the issues that had been vexing these groups. Impa may have been just indulging Zelda, though. That still means that Link successfully aided the Gorons and the Zora in so obtaining the keys they held to the sacred realm. A feat that should have allowed him to triumphantly go back to Zelda and her father, demanding to at least be heard. The one thing that stopped him, interestingly, was something beyond the control of even adults. Treachery. It's a very simple thing, lying. As a species, humans have classically built societies on communication and trust. As such, speaking falsehood is more often than not met with disapproval. Scheming for the achievement of selfish goals is frowned upon and shunned. You'd think we will be pretty good at detecting lies then, right? If it's so important. Except we're not. Most people overestimate their ability to find out lies. So that's something we're good at. Thinking we're good at detecting lies. This overconfidence can no doubt be a prime condition to exploit for the purpose of deception, which could explain how Ganondorf got to where he was. Plus, we should consider that Ganondorf is characterized in Ocarina of Time as being quite intelligent. So much so that the warlock anticipated Link would open the door of time, which allowed him access to the Triforce. It's not unreasonable to believe that he will be able to trick the king and his court. But I digress, this was about Link. With this array that the kingdom has been put in, and seeing as going to the authorities for help is not an option anymore, Link can only push forward and act as Zelda instructed. I find this moment to be probably the single most important point in development for Link, even greater than the end of the game. Link is a child, an extremely capable fighter, ambassador and survivalist, but a child nonetheless. What's expected of him is to slowly and without consequence learn about how the world works, worrying little about the hidden agreements and conflict at the higher spheres of power. You know, it's often said that children should enjoy their carefree living while they still can. When problems arise, well beyond a child's power, they're supposed to look for an adult that can use their greater array of abilities to help them. But in this case, there's no one Link can go to. He could technically seek the assistance of the people he's helped before, but who's to say they can provide what he needs? He could also just run away back to the forest or back to London Ranch, but chances are Ganondorf will eventually conquer these territories as well. Or this specific situation, this specific contrivance, Link can only attempt to fight, even if he knows he cannot win. And so he does. In doing so, Link is forced to leave the wondrous, carefree nature of childhood and firmly cement his commitment to duty above all else. It's actually quite tragic, even if us players only see it as a device for moving the plot forward. Link has just lost his childhood, and he won't be getting it back. Then, adding insult to injury, Ganondorf reveals he has been using Link. So not only has the boy been forced to grow up, he's also immediately failed his mission to protect the power of the gods by simply attempting to do so. This will have major implications for Link's further transformation into the legendary hero of time, but this video is already long as is, so I suppose I should stop here.
Hey, thank you for watching. I'm not very good at these bits, so I'll just say it was nice having you around, and I hope to see you again. Have a good one.